And welcome back to the Coach's Perspective here on Riverside TV, where it's all Riverside all the time. As we are now joined by our great friend, Ghazal Hassan. How you doing, Ghazal?
Jeff, great to be here with you again. Another exciting week of football this past weekend.
Week 5 is coming up, but week 4, let's talk about it. First, let's talk about that North matchup we had on Friday night. Wow, talk about those Huskies. How good are they this season?
Yeah, pretty good. And I think we saw that the first game that you and I saw against Notre Dame. They're deep, they're balanced, they're talented, and I think they're coaching them up as well. And it's a good combination of young guys and experienced guys, particularly on the defensive side. They have a lot of experience. Then obviously, Jaden Gamble at the controls of the offense is doing a great job.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, they're a two-headed monster. You know, they can play great offense. They can run the ball. They got Vanacio Mekaele, who's just phenomenal running between the tackles and just as strong as an ox. But they can throw the ball, and defensively, I mean, they are stopping everybody in their tracks. That defensive line is really shored up the run. Their secondary is quick. And I'll tell you what, they're going to cause problems, I think, for a lot of teams when they come CIF time.
I mean, the only thing now you worry about is, are they so good that they'll outplay themselves, right? We talk about this all the time. You know, Novi's had this issue where when you're really good in your league and there's nobody that can challenge you, your guys don't get to play 4 quarters. They're not battle-tested going into the playoffs. And you may, in the first round, play a team that just barely got in by the skin of their teeth that had to win their last 2 games. So you worry about that a little bit. But I think talent-wise, you know, North is just at such a level that I don't think you really worry about that. But, you know, I'm sure Opie Vaipulu and Dennis Brown and that whole staff, they're going to want a close game. They're going to want a nail-biter somewhere along the line just to see the mettle of this team mentally, how they deal with, you know, playing a close game or maybe a game where they have to come from behind and win it with either passing or, you know, with making a play on defense.
Well, I'll tell you what, they're going to be really fun to watch when they hit in the league. There's some big hurdles they're going to have to jump over to get to that next level that we've seen John W. North football. But let's go ahead to this week. Let's talk a little bit about those Braves at Norte Vista. Ken Batdorf has them playing on all cylinders, and they play Redlands on Friday night. What do you see, or what are you going to take away from that game?
You know, Ken Batdorf is like a top 40 music producer. He just plays the hits. And he plays the same hits year after year after year, and people don't seem to mind. Got the great running game, obviously, with Eddie Elaine, Carbajal, the big boys up front doing the job. I'm really what intrigues me about this matchup, Jeff, is the opponent. You know, Redlands. We don't get a lot of that. We should get more of it. You know, Redlands, Rev, Citrus Valley playing Riverside teams. A pretty cool matchup for a solid Riverside team in Norte Vista. It's always pretty good, playing a very traditionally strong Redlands team out of the Redlands area. You know, back in the '90s when I started covering high school football, you know, Redlands, they were kind of, you know, along with Eisenhower, Fontana, Redlands was a pretty big deal in the Inland Empire. There were maybe 6 teams back then in the Inland Empire. You know, Faux High kind of led the charge, and then I got really good, like, you know, towards the mid '90s, but. Redlands was always solid. They were always in the playoffs. They always posed problems. So I like kind of this intra-sectional rivalry going on. I think we should see more of it. We've talked about how it's great to see Riverside teams play each other. So they should play, for your 5 non-leagues, you should play 4 Riverside teams, and then something like this, like something like fairly close, not quite in Riverside. I want to see the matchup between Novi and Redlands.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's homecoming for the Braves. Coach Batdorf is nearing his 200th win. You know, he's been there 28 years. I tell everybody 74 years. 28 years is pretty special, especially with everybody coming back on homecoming. It's got to be pretty special for him.
Is Frank Corral going to come back? That's what I need to know.
That's what everyone needs to know. Where is Frank Corral? I know he works for the city of Riverside. It'd be nice to get him to come to a game. But who knows? But we need to get into the next thing. The next topic is you and I covered RCC football, the defending national champs. We had them this past weekend against Saddleback. Man, what did you think? I mean, we've heard Tom Kraft talk about his offense for years. We've seen it, but it was his defense that really shined on Saturday night.
You know, you were with me. We're down on the field, and James Cook, the defensive coordinator, very unassuming man, almost Clark Kent-like, was sitting there on the bench. And, you know, I know who he is. I haven't really gotten a chance to speak with him. So we finished our open. I went over to him and I said, Coach Cook, hey, I just want to introduce myself. And I said to him, I said, hey, we know, RCC is really famous for their offense, but the last couple of years that you and I have been able to cover them, I told him, hey, I love how your defense plays, and hopefully you go get him. And he kind of gave me a smile and said, yeah, we're working on some things. Man, were they ever. That man does not lie. I mean, here's a Saddleback team that rolled Glendale 58-12 a couple of weeks previous, and they didn't even get into the end zone. They got 6 points on 2 field goals in the game. I think there were 4 interceptions, 2 pick sixes, and the defense really, it was almost as if they were like on a billiard table, and they were just controlling what was thought to be an explosive offense for Saddleback. Remember, this is when we played a full season in 2019, Saddleback averaged over 500 yards per game, and I think you were saying they'd put up 544 against Glendale. They had 73 yards from scrimmage on their first play against Glendale. And so what an impressive performance. 2 pick sixes. Carlton Williams had a pick 6. DeMarco Moore had a pick 6 for RCC. And the middle of that line, the defensive line, which Tom Kraft had raved to me about, he said, hey, I may have 2 of the great young defensive ends in the state in Talib Salahuddin and Rayshon Gilmore, and boy, did they stand up, Jeff.
They did, and I'll tell you what, the biggest surprise, though, were my favorite guys, the place kicker. Let's tell you, I mean, I watched NFL football all weekend, and I've said, nobody kicked better than our guy at RCC.
Well, Ricardo Chavez, he's a Valley View guy, was a soccer player as well as a football player at Valley View, and, again, and there's Tom Kraft doesn't really give you a whole lot, right? He'll answer the question, but he's not a type of guy who volunteers information. And what surprised me was he volunteered info about the offensive line, which talked about all game. And he talked about Chavez. Hey, this may be the best guy we've had since I've been here, which is a ringing endorsement because he sent a couple of guys on to the next level at place kickers. And man, a 50-yarder to one end of the stadium and then a 50-yarder to the other end of the stadium. Great on the kickoffs. And actually, I think, what may get him the scholarship is how he's able to punt, right? He boomed a 60-yarder. They line him up at the 42-yard line to punt. And he puts it out of bounds at the 3. So he could do both. He can go by air, or he can go by land, he could go by sea. He could do it all.
He's like Zerline and Hecker combined.
A little bit. And who knows? Like at the D1 level, when scholarships now at such a premium, you want to get talent in there. A guy who can do both can be valuable, depending on what school is looking at him. And I know UTEP was there. UTEP and San Jose State, I believe, both had reps at the game on Saturday that we saw. I definitely saw the UTEP guy, and somebody told me there was a San Jose State guy lurking about as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, they looked really, really good. We're going to have them again this Saturday night as they're going to play Golden West. You and I called that game, I believe, 2 years ago, and Riverside rolled. But can they roll again versus a much improved Golden West team?
Wrestlers are always tough. They're like Long Beach City. They're always tough. And, Long Beach City, we know they always play RCC tough. And traditionally, Golden West has too. I think RCC has had a talent advantage the last couple of years. But they're going to come in. They're going to play hard. And they have a great pool of talent to choose from as well, being there on Huntington Beach. But man, I think it's a different RCC team, Jeff, than you and I have seen in years past. But I think they're pretty darn good this season. Yeah,
I agree. I think they have an opportunity to really change the idea of what Riverside football is. It's usually, we're going to outscore you, and that's our defense. But I think their defense comes first, and I think the defense will bring them another championship. And we're going to cover all home games here on Riverside TV. A lot of fun. Ghazal, it's always a pleasure. We're going to see you and probably next week as we're going to be back.
Yeah, I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss you this weekend. I'm back. I think we have Hillcrest. Is it Hillcrest La Sierra? No, Hillcrest Patriot. I'll be back for Hillcrest and Patriot. So that should be interesting.
We will not have you in the booth this weekend, but we will be thinking about you. It's always great to have you join in on the Coach's Perspective. And it's always great being in the booth with you, my friend. He is Ghazal Hassan. I'm Jeff Gorham, and we'll be right back with more from the Coach's Perspective. And welcome back to the Coach's Perspective here on Riverside TV, as we are now joined by one of my all-time favorite people. He has been the head coach at Norte Vista for 74 straight years. He is Ken Batdorf. How you doing today, Ken?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, Coach, you guys are started off great. You're undefeated going into a Friday night matchup. It's homecoming versus Redlands. Coach, tell us a little bit about your team. You know, you're undefeated. Tell us how you're playing and what's going on with the Braves.
I think we're playing okay. I don't think we're there yet, and that's okay. You know, we need to get better. We had a lot of guys dinged up. We've had guys sitting. We're hoping to get most of them back this week. We want them to play before we get into league play, so that'll help us. You know, we're getting wins, but we're not as crisp as I would like. You know, the goal is to play your best, and we're not playing our best. So, you know, it's something to improve on, and that's important.
Well, you guys are outscoring your opponents 99-21, I think, on the year, which is pretty darn good. You had a 7. In fact, I want to say this: the only time in the history of covering Norte Vista football, you had a 7-0 win. What the heck's going on there, buddy?
As I said, we had a lot of guys out, but give a lot of compliments to Claremont. They played really well on defense, and we kept shooting ourselves in the foot with kicking the ball around and you know, getting penalties and playing dumb. And luckily, our defense played outstanding and saved it for us.
Yeah, talking about that defense, I mean, your defensive line has been phenomenal so far this year. I want to say you guys and John W. North are probably the two best defensive teams I've seen this season. What do you equate that to, your defense, more so than your offense this year?
Well, I'm on the offensive side of the ball coaching, so that's probably the reason the defense is better. And I got Andy Martinez, Larry Rawson, Josh Rawson, Matt Cow's doing a fantastic job with our DBs, and old man Richie. So, you know, those guys do a great job on the defensive side. And for the most part, I try to get out of their way. You know, what's the game plan? They tell me, it's like, all right, let's go. And when you have 5 guys that are selling out, working that hard, it makes my job so much easier.
Well, Coach, you know, let's talk about some of those guys on defense. I know you have a lot of guys that play both ways, but talk about some of those key players that you have on the defensive side of the football.
Well, you know, the first guy I'd probably have to mention would be Eddie Elaine. Everybody looks at him as a running back, and he's not bad. But defensively, he's been turning a lot of heads, getting a lot of college interest. We've had 3 or 4 colleges, you know, talk to him. Nobody's offered officially, but I expect that to change shortly. We got Jesse Carbajal. He's playing great at linebacker. Isaiah Chamal, you know, he was dinged up a little bit, but he's back. He's about 90%. You know, we got a ton of other kids. We got Maui, a.k.a. Victor Ung. Cruz is doing a great job for us. And our defensive backs are fantastic. We got C.J. Richardson. We got Isaac Gaines. Demarion's doing a good job on offense. And Keenan. So we got a lot of kids. And that's probably what makes it nice for us. We have more depth than most people do right now, specifically at the skilled guy spot. Linemen, we're not quite as deep as we'd like because we're getting guys healthier and stuff. We're almost where we want to be. As I said, by Friday, I'm hoping we're there.
Now, offensively, you guys have always been a juggernaut. I mean, you just smash teams, playing your great offense. Do you see yourselves with that 1-2 running backs with Carvajal and Elaine? Do you guys see? I mean, have you improved in the 3 weeks that you guys have played on the offensive side of the football?
Yes and no. And the reason it's kind of I have to hesitate is we're running different offenses, which for me is crazy. We threw the ball 10 times in the first half last week. And I know you don't believe me. We can pull out the film and count. And that's a little different for us. But, you know, we want to be able to do different things. When we had some guys dinged up, we decided to become more of a pass team. But we have, you know, you said Eddie and Jesse. But I'll be honest with you, our second string backs, Demarion Richardson, Isaiah Chamal, Keenan Stoddard, those guys are as good as almost anybody will play. And we're really deep at running back.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Redlands. Redlands comes in at 1-3, but they played a pretty darn good schedule, and they are a big school. They played, you know, in history, in the past, they've been a very good football team. What do you see with this Redlands team this year?
I think defensively they're as strong as almost anybody will see. I really like some of their kids. You know, I went and watched them in person during our COVID week where we couldn't play, unfortunately. And it did give me an opportunity to scout. And we saw some players, and that's the best way to say it. They can play football. They get to the ball. They come with an attitude. And, you know, it's going to be a really good test for us. You know, we have to get better because we're playing better people. We're getting ready for league. And, we have the distractions of a homecoming, and I know they'd want to wreck it. So we really need to get after them in a hurry.
Okay, Coach, now let's talk a little bit that, I'm around town. I talk to a lot of people, and they ask me the same question. How come teams aren't in, divisions this year? And I explained to them, hey, CIF is run a lot differently now that the COVID era has hit us. They're going to change a little bit. Can you explain a little bit about the seeding and what will go on in the CIF playoffs this season?
Hopefully I make sense. So what's going to happen is if you take first, second, or third place in your league, assuming it's a 16 league, if you're a 14 league, it's first and second. And what they're going to do is they will take all of those qualifying teams. In the past, sometimes qualifying teams, when Vinny Fazio was at Ramona, I was upset. He was upset they were 7-2-1 and took third place and got knocked out of the playoffs, even though they were the third place team, and he had a great record. So this eliminates that. What's going to happen now is they're going to rank all the people from the top seed, and they're going to use Cal Prep's rating. So a good example would be, let's say, modern day right now. They're the number one team in CIF, and they're going to rank 1 through 8. That's our open division. And then the next 9 through and then go down, that's Division 1. And then from then down, Division 2. Every division except Division 1 will have a couple openings for some wild cards. And those teams must fit within the ceiling and the floor of that division. So it'll be interesting. So you really don't know what division you're in until the end of the season. I mean, it could change up to the last week. So it makes it kind of tough. When you're a guy like me, I'm a film junkie. I would go out and get film on everybody in my division. I'm losing my division until week 11, until CIF releases it. So it is kind of interesting.
Well, Coach, you guys have it's the homecoming game this Friday night. This is your 74th homecoming game. You're close to your 200th win, I believe, at Norte Vista High School. Coach, you've done a great job, and I kid around with you. You and I are closest of friends. But what's it mean when you have 24 years of former football players and students coming back and saying thank you to you?
It's actually 28.
28, sorry.
Yeah, hey, it's not 74. But we had something awesome happen last week for our team meal. I had 2 former players who called me up and said, Coach, we want to do the team meal. We saw how Mike Langford gives back. We want to give back. And I've been getting a lot of that from the community, people calling me up and wanting to give back food and water and anything they do to support our kids. To me, that speaks volumes of what we've done with our program and what the kids have done. Tuesdays, we do something different here. And we do early release. I don't know if any other programs have that. And we release our kids early. And it's like I get my kids at 12:30. And you can't start at 12:30, especially with the coaches showing up late. So we bring in food for our kids. We feed them. It's catered. It's fantastic. We do other stuff then. We'll have study hall, film session. And then during practice, to motivate our kids, and with the fear of COVID, you never know who you're going to lose. I was talking to John Rice, and he was telling me that he lost 3 kids right before the Ramona game. So what I do is I cut our team in half, try to make it as equal as possible. And there's some huge holes. And I tell the coaches, fix it, fill it. You're scrimmaging each other. And it's really interesting, and the kids love it because they get to compete. We're playing at a high level. And I tell my kids, the goal is every Tuesday should be harder than Friday night. And hopefully we continue to do that.
Well, Coach, before we get into league, good luck to you the rest of the way. And we'll be seeing you this Friday night, homecoming versus Redlands at Zach Earp Stadium on Riverside TV at 7 p.m. And then we'll see you later on in the season in River Valley League. Thanks, Coach Batdorf, for joining us on the Coach's Perspective here on Riverside TV. And welcome back to the Coach's Perspective here on Riverside TV. We're finishing up our show, but before we do, we got to bring on my best pal in the entire world, Pep Fernandez of Inland Sports. How you doing, Pep?
The best for last. And Jeff, I dressed up for you and all of our fine friends and neighbors across the city of Riverside. I had to look good for you today.
Well, hey, I'll tell you what, you look great. The beard looks good, and it's always great seeing my best pal on the air. Hey, Riverside football is back, baby. What do you think? We've had 5 weeks, and we have some great, great teams. What do you think of Riverside football right now?
Jeff, here's the thing. Like, I don't know if we've talked about it between, you and I here on the coach's perspective at least, but, we don't know what playoff divisions each of these teams will be in at the end of the regular season. The CIF is doing something completely new this season where they're not putting teams in divisions until the end of the regular season. So I think there's a real shot that, let's say, North and Ramona and Norta Vista, and I don't know, maybe even King, if they're all in separate playoff divisions, I feel like, and I know we have a long road still to go to get to the end of the season, but I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, we could have 4 Riverside schools making deep runs in the playoffs if they're all in separate divisions. But again, we won't know until the end of the regular season.
Yeah, and my question is to you is, do they go by the CIF rankings? Is there a certain website we can go to? Because if we're going by Max Preps, Norta Vista and North are like 4 apart from each other. If they go by those kind of rankings, they could be in the same division come playoff time.
Well, there is a state website called Cal High Sports, and it's not officially associated with the CIF Southern Section. It's not a CIF site, but they do have rankings on there. So if you're trying to prognosticate and trying to figure out, well, okay, Ramona, I guess they'll probably be, I don't know, Division 9. You could go on there and maybe make a guess, an estimate, but really no one's going to know until the end of the regular season. And that's kind of crazy because in years past, you know exactly what division you're in. And if you're a playoff caliber team, you can look at those other teams in the division. Let's say you're Ramona and you're like, okay, we know we're Division 11. Who are the other good teams in Division 11 that we might see in the playoffs? You can't do that this year. There's no planning. You just kind of get to the playoffs and say, let's get the party started, and you play whoever they put up against you.
And as well as I do, a lot of these coaches are film junkies. They watch film nonstop. Now they can't watch film because they don't know who the heck they're going to play.
No, they're probably going crazy. You know what I mean? Like, who knows who they're going to play? So maybe their wives are appreciating that because it's more time with the family, because they could be breaking down film, but because they don't know. You can't break down film of, I don't know how many schools are in the Southern Section, like 400 maybe, 300 and something. You can't break down video of every single school out there. So a lot more family time and less planning for the playoffs if you're Norta Vista or North or King or Ramona, one of those schools who look like locks to make the postseason.
Well, let's talk about the Inland Sports Riverside TV Top 5 this week. We put the numbers in the Inland Sports machine, and we popped out the top 5, and at the top of our top 5 is John W. North. Man alive, I had a chance to watch them for a second time this season, and they're getting better and better and better, and it starts with that defense. It is lights out, Pep. What do you think of North so far?
Yeah, until they stumble at some point, there's no reason to take them out of that top spot. I don't think anyone's going to argue against us. And you're right. We spend so much time talking about Hassan Elliott and Venancio Micaele and Jaden Gamble, the quarterback. But you're right, that defense. And that's what's going to really carry a team to a championship. We know this, Jeff. If you've got a great defense, once you get to the playoffs, the teams with that great defense are the ones that are going to be in the hunt for the title. So JW North, I'm super impressed. And if you want to look down on, down the road on the horizon, that big game against Orange Vista might be the last kind of big game that they're going to have before they get to the playoffs. And that could be for that Sun Belt League title.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, we've kind of nicknamed them the criminal defense attorneys because they are stopping up everybody. The only way people are scoring on them is if they make a mistake, and they haven't made too many of those so far this season. So the ceiling is just continuing to get higher and higher for the Huskies.
Yeah, and that's when you look at their non-league schedule, they played some good teams, but they haven't really had a close game. So I'm curious to see them play against Orange Vista, who's having a good season. They need to be a little bit more battle-tested to make that playoff run at the end of the season.
Yes, they do. And I tell you what, they are firing on all cylinders. It's great to see the band there. Honestly, the Blue Star Regiment is back. The student body is back. High school football is back, and it's number 1 at North this week on the Riverside TV Inland Sports Top 5. Number 2 is a team we have on Friday night, and that is Norte Vista. They're going to play Redlands, but Norte Vista continues to do what they do. Ken Batdorf in his 28th year doing the same thing he always does.
You know what? It's the same old, and it works. So, and why change that? Norte Vista, whether it's 10 years ago or 5 years ago or last week, they always play the same brand of football. The thing with Norte Vista is, I feel like we haven't seen a whole lot of them. And then they're going to play Redlands on Friday. And no offense to the Terriers, my wife is a Redlands high school grad. She's a Terrier, but they're really down this year. So that won't be a true test for Norte Vista either. So they're going to get to River Valley League play, and they got that huge showdown with Ramona looming. So you know what I mean? Like they need to be kind of like North. They need to be tested before they get to the playoffs. And I know it's the Riverside TV game of the week. I'm predicting a big game for Eddie Elaine. I think he's going to be running wild.
Yeah, and you just mentioned the other team in the River Valley League, which comes in third, and that's Mush and Ramona. Coach Mashinsky. I'll tell you what, people around town, I have guys that I work with are going, what's going on with Ramona? They put up 57 points against their big rival, Riverside Poly, on Friday night. Holy smokes, they can put up some numbers over at Ram High.
Yeah, and Jeff, that gap between Ramona and Norte Vista, and even Ramona and North for that number one spot in the Riverside TV rankings, it's shrinking every week. The Rams are doing something pretty impressive, and you're like, wow, they're even better than I thought. So that gap is not very big between Ramona and Novi and JW North. I mean, those three teams are all having really good seasons. And Ramona is blowing teams out, and teams in years past, maybe that would have been, let's say, for example, Riverside Poly or a Citrus Hill, competitive games. This year, different. Ram High is on a different level. They're scoring a ton of points, and I'm excited. They're playing Corona this week, actually. That might be their biggest non-league game. Coach Ron Garinger and the Corona Panthers are actually 3-0. They beat Hillcrest. They beat Arlington, teams that, if you're Corona, you're expected to win those games. So Corona versus Ramona, kind of rhymes. Corona versus Ramona might be the Rams' biggest game of the non-league season.
Yeah, and watching Ramona, I mean, you and I get to get on the field early in the games, and you watch teams warm up. They just have a sense of that they're going to win every single game they're in, and it's palpable. You can feel it among the team. You can feel it going to the games. The fans, the coaching staff, everybody's on board. Buy-in is huge at Ramona High School.
Yeah, and it starts at the top, man. We love Coach Mush, Ken Mashinsky. He's doing a great job. And if we rewind back to the last real regular football season in 2019, I mean, he got them to a CIF championship game. So that expectation, that standard at Ram High is different now. Like when you put on that Ramona high school uniform, that expectation is, guys, listen, we're going in expecting to win every single game, and this is a team we're expecting to get through the playoffs. We're going to string together a couple wins and maybe get to another CIF championship game. That's the expectation now at Ram High.
Well, and that's what you like when you see teams. Coach Mush, he asked me to speak last time at the CIF championship. I will refuse next time because when I went and talked to him, they ended up losing. So I am, as an alumni, I will refuse. I will just be on the outside looking in.
Hey, you know what? That Jeff Gorham, whatever you call it, lucky charm or whatever you want to call it. Maybe it backfired that time, but I got a feeling that if Jeff Gorham stopped in the Rams locker room before kickoff this time around, it might work.
Well, I hope so. I always hope well for my Ram High and Coach Mush. All those guys over at Ramona, they're doing a great job. But let's go down to our final in the top five, or I should say 4 in our top 5. Martin Luther King High School, the biggest surprise for me this season in Riverside. Coach McMahon's had them playing some football, especially after the second half of that Ramona game that they lost. They have been dominant since that second half, and they haven't looked back.
Yeah, Jeff, when you go back to that Ramona game, you thought, oh, man, King lost to Ramona. That's a game probably, they should have won. They're a Big 8 league school. They should have beat a River Valley League school. But now that we're a couple of weeks, deep into the football season, we're thinking, wait, Ramona's really good. So the fact that King barely lost to Ramona, maybe that wasn't such a bad loss. And I got to see King with my own eyes when they played Redlands East Valley. And Rev, although they've been down the last 2 years, Rev isn't bad this year. And King won, I think they won by 20, like 3 touchdowns. So that was a good quality win for King. So now that we see their whole body of work through the first 4 or 5 weeks of the high school football season, that wasn't a bad loss to Ramona, and that was a really good win on the road at Redlands East Valley, which they took that game on a whim at last notice because they both needed an opponent for that week. So, yeah, King is turning some heads, and I'll say this again, that the race for third place in the Big 8 League, and again, you've got Centennial and Norco, who are probably two of the top 5 teams, maybe in the whole state of California right now. But the race for third place, King is going to be right there. Corona's improved a lot. Roosevelt feels like they should be there. But I think King has a real shot to finish in third in the Big 8 League.
I agree 100%. And rounding out the top 5, a bit of an up and down season so far, but it's a young team, and that is Hillcrest out of the River Valley League. Coach Travis Carter's got them playing well, but they have been a little up and down, as you'd say. But a really good game as they played Corona a couple weeks ago. I heard that was the game of the year. Came up a little short, but Hillcrest right there in the mix again in the River Valley League play.
And Jeff, that's what happens with a young team, right? You got to learn how to win. You're going to take your lumps. There's growing pains when you have a young team. But they're hanging. They're hanging with some good teams out there. We're finding out Corona's pretty good. So that was a good game to hang around and have a chance to win at the end. But, with a young team also, you're going to get better as the season goes along because they're just getting more and more experience under their belt. So who knows, at the end of the season, Hillcrest could be a lot improved with those young guys, getting battle tested, getting thrown into the fire and responding for Coach Carter.
Yeah, Coach Carter's done a really good job. I saw Coach Brandon. Coach Brandon was at the Poly game, and he looks exactly like Thanos. I'm not kidding around. I looked at his arm. I made sure he didn't have the Infinity Gauntlet, but he's like ripped and fit. And I'm like, who is that guy? And he came over and he growled at me. And I'm like, hey, that's Thanos for you right there. But yeah, I'll tell you what, he's done a great. Coach Carter's done a great job after Coach Branham, a legend, stepped down. And I'll tell you what, if the River Valley League is going to be something special this year, especially with Novi, Ramona, and Hillcrest.
Yeah, and you know what? That's kind of been the 3 teams the last couple of years in the River Valley League when you're talking about league championship. And this year, last couple of years, it's been basically Novi against Hillcrest for that league title. This year, it looks like it's shaping up to be at least Norte Vista versus Ramona, and that game is going to be amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And I'll tell you what, Pep, this season has been great so far. I know you are covering a lot for the San Bernardino region. We have you on Friday nights on Sports Weekly Live, 11 p.m. from your house, I see. So everybody needs to check in and watch Pep on Friday nights after all the football games are over, 11 p.m. And then on Wednesday nights at 6 on the Inland Sports Show. Things are going great for you, aren't they, Pep?
They are. We're in the studio. We're interviewing athletes. It all, seems pretty normal for us at least. So yeah, it's been going great. But I do want to say real quick before you let me go, if John Branham is Thanos, then you are definitely the Thor of local football because you look just like him.
Hey, you know what? You just made my wife really happy. I'm gonna have to play that over and over. I've been told I look more like Fury. I'm like Nick Fury. Just give me one of these right here. But Pep, thank you as always. Watch Pep Wednesday night, 6 p.m. on the Inland Sports Show, and Friday nights, Sports Weekly Live with Pep Fernandez. Always great to see you, Pep. You're my best friend. You know it, and I love you, buddy. And we'll see you next week on the Coach's Perspective.
You got it, brother.
Well, he's been Pep. I'm Jeff, and we'll see you next week on the Coach's Perspective. Good night, everybody.